If you're into air guns, but 177 seems like just too small for you, but 22 caliber maybe sometimes seems a little too big, well, Goldilocks has a solution for you. Welcome back to Canuck Air. We have on the bench today American Royalty. The other day, a friend of mine doubled his collection of Sheridan air rifles by buying this one, so he now has two. This is a Sheridan Blue Streak C9 series, which indicates it's from the later period of Sheridans, which are the ones that people aren't terribly up on when it comes to collecting. This is from a period of time when the Sheridan brand was sort of winding down a bit, I suppose. So, but this is a Sheridan Blue Streak. And if you aren't familiar with Sheridans, and I'm not super familiar with them, they don't turn up all that often up here in Canada. Not as popular, obviously, as some other brands. But they were always regarded as a bit of a prestige air rifle, in that they were considered better made than the guns that were targeted at the youth market. The original Sheridan, the Model A, which was introduced, I think, in 1948, I think, that was the later called the Super Grade, because its quality and build was such that it ended up being a very expensive gun, about $56.50 back in those days, which was in par with buying a Winchester or Remington centerfire big game rifle. So yeah, they were not aimed at kids. Trouble was, you couldn't sell too many of those at those sort of prices. So less expensive models followed, the Model B, and then finally in 1949 the Model C. And that gun is the ancestor of this one in every way. They didn't change the gun too much over the years. So this is essentially a 1940s design, just with some minor updates. They made changes to sights, they made changes to the trigger guard and the bolt handles, and the safety changed as well. At heart, it is a pump-up pneumatic air gun. Swing out the main forearm here, compress it shut. Do that 3 times, 4, 5, 6, up to 8 times to get maximum power out of it. They did say you could quite comfortably plink at 3 or 4 pumps. For full power, you might reserve that for longer range shooting or pest control. So, but the main feature of a Sheridan that sets apart from pretty much all other air guns of its era was the fact that it's not a 177 or a 22 caliber gun. Sheridan split the difference and went with a 20 caliber marking. .20 caliber pellets are just not that common. These are the official Sheridan ones, made in different packages over the years. I would guess these are older. Not entirely sure. But other companies have made pellets to fit the 20 caliber guns, and a couple of other guns have appeared over the years using the 20 caliber because there are claims that ballistically it splits the difference between 22 and 177, so you get a little more flat shooting like a 177, but with a little more heavier pellet weight, closer to a 22. As a matter of fact, these pellets, I think, I haven't weighed them yet, these ones weigh in around about 16 grains, which is the weight of a heavier than average 22 caliber pellet. 22s are often 14, I consider to be fairly average. There are some a little bit lighter and some a bit heavier, and then some of those extra heavy ones that are becoming the thing these days. But these Sheridan pellets were 16 grain pellets right out of the box back in those days. So that's why they claim better penetration. They often showed ads showing these pellets burrowing deeper into planks of wood than competing airgun pellets could do. Like I said, there's some other pellets here that we can try out with the gun, some more modern ones from JSB. These H&Ns are interesting because they follow the design of the Sheridan pellets, which I'll get into later. And here's some H&N field target trophies as well. So, and these weigh marked at 11.42 grains, so that's kind of what you'd expect for a mid-sized pellet. But Sheridan didn't just make the Blue Streak rifle, and this one, as I say, these ones arrived on the scene in late 1949, and they came in at a lower price than the previous A and B rifles. Sheridan managed to get the price down to $19.95 by then, and then sales really took off. The guns were, again, probably not, you couldn't call them super popular. They were still a premium product, considered to be a step above your garden grade Crosswind Benjamin at the time. And and they had their own special pellets, which I imagine you had to keep stocked up on those things, because if you traveled up to the lake and ran out of pellets, you might find the local hardware store only had 177s and 22s and some BBs, and they didn't stock 20 caliber. So this is the Sheridan Blue Streak, not actually blued. There's this steel part here is blued, but the tube here and the barrel are actually brass. Brass or bronze, anyway. I don't really know on this particular one. This gun was made in the 1990s, and I don't know whether they had gone to a brass barrel like the Benjamins had, but the barrel is not magnetic, and the pump tube also. You pick up a bit of magnetism here and there, but that's because of metal parts and steel parts inside. The rest of it, no, doesn't stick. So, and why on earth did they go with brass or bronze? Benjamins used brass barrels. Sheridan were proud to use bronze or phosphor bronze barrels. And that was because this is a pneumatic gun. And unlike a spring piston gun, spring piston guns crush a certain amount of air up to very, very dense. It gets very, very hot. And you'll notice that it's hot enough to burn off any oils and whatever you have in your chamber or barrel. And you'll get puffs of smoke out of spring piston guns. These guns don't work that way at all. It's kind of weird. It's still an air gun, but things are a bit backwards. You compress the air ahead of time, pump it up into the chamber, and when you fire it, it is released down the barrel, and that causes the air to cool rapidly. So any moisture that is in that air you've compressed now condenses inside the barrel, and over time that could lead to rust. So the smart guys figured, hey, we'll make the barrels out of bronze. It's not a firearm. We don't have to worry about the heat of burning powders and things like that, and the barrels will last longer that way. Very cool. As I say, my friend managed to double the size of his Sheridan collection by buying this one, and his previous one is this one here. Another very famous model, and no doubt helped propel the fortunes of the Sheridan brand. This is called the Silver Streak. Again, pretty much exactly the same gun as that. It is marked Silver Streak right up at the front. This one is marked Blue Streak in the same place. And the silver, of course, comes from being beautifully nickel-plated all the way through. The Blue Streak here has a nickel-plated bolt, a nickel-plated trigger, and a nickel-plated end cap for some interesting reason. Not sure if they all were like that over the years, but these ones are certainly like that. But this one is nickel-plated through and through. One interesting thing about Benjamin guns that kind of set them apart was the wood was American walnut, very proudly American walnut, and often had pretty nice qualities to it. This one has a bit of tiger stripes through it. This one doesn't. But on the other hand, this fore end really does not match in color to the rear stock at all. But that's just the way they were. There's nothing unusual about this. It hasn't been replaced or changed with anything. It's just the way they came from the factory. They didn't match up the front and the back as well as perhaps people might like. This one's a little bit closer, but it's still, the grain still doesn't match. Now, as I say, the Sheridan C-Series guns were made from 1949 on to, I think, 2012 was the last ones. And I think this, there were a lot of variations over the years, small changes made to production. Some things, were slight improvements. Early guns, it was a common thing to want to put a Williams peep sight on there that Williams made specially for the Sheridans. I've even got an article in a book that shows you how to drill and tap the receiver to be able to put that on there because they didn't come ready for it. Later guns like these, they're already ready to go. If you buy one of those sights, they go on there. You could also order the gun with that sight attached. You could also order a model with an intermount clamped on the barrel here for mounting a scope. But those are things you could also add on later. There's also a period there too where they discovered that the plating or the finish was wearing off right here on the gun because of your pumping action. Your sweaty hands right here were damaging the finish. And Sheridan, being Sheridan, they decided to make a plastic guard that clamped on over here where you put your hand on it, and it kept the finish clean. And of course you would take that off if you want to put the scope mount on there. Neither of these guns have that. I don't know whether they were still shipping them with those parts in the era these guns were made. And I keep saying the era these guns were made. These are guns made in the early 1990s up to I think about 1995 or so. 97 I think was the last of these ones. So definitely made in that range. Sheridan guns can be, the Sheridan C series can be broken down into probably 4 series. The first series, as collectors really look for, they have the receiver on the back here is smoothly radius down, and the safety was something you had to hold down with your thumb while you pull the trigger. You had to keep your thumb on it for it to fire. If you let go, it popped up a little bit and locked the trigger. That was replaced. People didn't like that quite as much, I guess, and they replaced it with a rocker one that went from side to side, fire and safe, depending on which way you just had to move it over, and then the trigger would fire. And those guns were made for a long, long period of time, and those are the ones most people are probably most familiar with. It's hard to find information on these ones, but these ones, according to the book I've got here, borrowed it, the book here shows that Sheridan were looking at making some changes to their guns. They had some prototypes in the early 90s, and they were making changes, I guess, to sort of merge the Sheridan line with the Benjamin line, because Benjamin had bought out Sheridan, or at least became a controlling interest in them in 1977. And like some 15 years later, they were prepared to make Benjamins more like Sheridans and Sheridans more like Benjamins. And probably one of the main things that was a detriment or a setback to selling more of these things was the 20 caliber pellets. What would happen if you made a Sheridan in 177 or 22? And so that's kind of what they did. The Benjamin 392 and the 397 guns are effectively the same gun as a Sheridan, except they were obviously available in 22 and 177 calibers. The instruction manual will show that they're pretty much the same gun. They share the same instruction manual and a lot of the same parts. And one of those things that was done was the safety was changed from the rocker type that Sheridan used for so many years to a push-pull one under your thumb like that. Push it forward to fire, pull back for safe. That safety survived until 1997, at which point Crossman were now the new owners of both Benjamin and Sheridan, and they consolidated the guns a little bit more and made a few more changes, and one of the things was to put a plastic trigger guard on with a crossbolt safety on there. And those guns survived. The Sheridan guns survived, I believe, until 2012, and the Benjamin 392 and 397 are still with us today, although they now come with a synthetic plastic stock on there that, the jury's out on it. People are complaining that the stock height is a little bit too high, designed for working with a scope. The trouble is the guns don't take a scope without buying the specific intermount to go on there. But that's a Benjamin problem, not what we're talking about today. But these guns are really quite nicely made. The interesting thing about them is how really short they are. They're quite petite. Got my tape measure here. And they do measure 95 centimeters, which is 37 and a quarter inches from stem to stern. And they're supposed to weigh in, the books say they weigh at 5 pounds. Of course, some of the information is out of date. Let's have a look here. What is 5 pounds? 2.668 grams, so 2.6 kilos, almost 2.7, which is 5 pounds, 14 ounces, so a bit over 5 pounds. The later guns gained one of the more refinements that the early A and B guns had, and that is a plastic butt plate on the end with Sheridan markings on it. Kind of fancy. So they didn't. It wasn't all backwards in the 1990s. For instance, the early Silver Streaks had a very high polish finish that went to a frosted matte nickel finish in many, many years. And it is mentioned in the book that in the early 90s they were going back to a high polish finish, which this gun obviously has. So very cool. There isn't supposed to be anything wrong with these guns. They seem to work perfectly well, so I might just take one apart to see where it might need a little bit of oiling. You don't put oil in this hole right here. They clearly mark it, air hole, do not oil. I imagine if oil gets in there, it might degrade the seals. So, but yeah, I might see what might be needed in them. They seem a little bit rattly and buzzy when you operate the hammer, so we'll take one apart and see what we got. Now the next step here is to see how these guns actually come apart. As I say, I'm not super familiar with these. Don't see too many of them. The first one I've actually taken apart. Boy, that's pretty tight. There we go. There we have it. And pretty clean inside there, not too bad. It's quite possible this gun has never been apart. So. The story goes with the 20 caliber design is that yes, they're supposedly were developed to, hopefully mine the best of the 177 and 22 world by splitting the difference. There was also some compelling evidence that the guns were that the caliber was developed to match the quality of the guns. The fear was that Sheridan had at the time was that the quality of pellets out there that were available in the 1940s wasn't great, and their gun, they figured, was great. It deserved ammunition as precisely made as the guns, and so they developed their own in-between caliber that you had to buy from them and only them, and you could be assured that you were getting the best quality pellet for your gun, and the manufacturer would be sure that people were shooting their guns with the best quality pellet and therefore getting best results out of it. Nobody wanted a reputation that, oh, the guns aren't that good or whatever. It turns out you're just using cheap pellets in it all the time. So one solution to that was only top quality pellets. Some interesting concessions to cost. This trigger is just simply one piece that has been folded around and bent. It looks alright when it's outside the gun, but inside you go, yeah, okay, yeah, alright, fairly affordable build, I should say. I'm not going to take all this apart. The gun seems to work just fine. There's nothing obviously wrong with it. I'm going to put a bit of oil in here before I put it back together again, and keep oil out of everywhere else. And probably oil some of the pivot points up here as well. And that's about all it's going to need, I think. I'll do the same to the other gun, and then we'll chronograph them, see what we get out of them. Okay, well, these little guns, they do tend to pick up some nicks and scratches, especially in the wood over the years. So I've got some stuff here called Trade Secret, if you've ever tried it or not, but this is for dark wood. They have a couple of different kinds of covers, nicks and scratches, and they aren't kidding, it works really well. This is a couple of small little surface marks here and some scuffs there. You apply this on a bit of steel wool, you rub it in. It has this weird greenish slimy brown color that you'd think would be completely at odds with what you're trying to accomplish. But it actually does work pretty well. I've already done this to the other gun, and it helped greatly. It was quite compatible with the wood, so sometimes it isn't. I guess they have different colors of this product that you would use, but I've had this bottle around for ages, and every now and again it proves it's worth having around. You can just wipe it on, and then it hardens up fairly quickly. And I said that weird greenish color disappears, and you end up with something that looks halfway decent. I thought there was another mark on it further down here, but yeah, it's one on the stock here. Let's see how this works here. Oh yeah, some down here as well, although that might be paint. Sometimes when a gun slips over next to a painted wall, it picks up the paint from the wall. Oh yeah, and a mark down here as well. And sometimes you get marks on them when you're trying to wrestle things out of your gun safe. Okay. Let's wipe that off and see what we got. Yeah, I think it's done the job here just as well as the other gun. The other gun needed just a little bit more. There are a few more obvious scratches in it. These are just more, I would say, more scuffs than scratches. But yeah, I think my friend will be happy with that. It looks pretty good. So here's some of the pellets I'm going to be trying in the Silver Streak and Blue Streak. These are the traditional Sheridan cylindrical lead airgun pellets, 20 caliber. And this is I think this is the older box. Kind of hard to tell, but they made them in these yellow boxes for quite some years. The feature was you could pop open the thing here and just shake out one pellet at a time. They are, in some ways, a bit of a throwback to airgun pellets that existed in the early 20th century or late 19th century, in that they are cylinder shape instead of a Diablo wasted pellet. They are hollow base though, and Sheridan apparently brought them out in this style because they believed that was the best fit for their gun, and they were supposedly of higher quality than what was available on the market in the 1940s. So let's see if I can weigh a couple of these and get a good beat on what they actually do weigh. 15.3, 15.4, also 15.4. Bit of oil in these. 15.4. Okay, so they seem to be pretty consistent. I may as well try this other box here, see if these measure any differently. 15.0, 15.1, 14.9, 15. Okay, so these ones appear to be just that little bit lighter. These are from Handler Naderman, Sheridan Spitzkugeln. Don't believe Sheridan is the brand name, just simply the type of rifle you have to shoot them in. 20 caliber, of course. Not a lot of choice in 20 caliber pellets out there. But interesting thing is these pellets are cylindrical again, but they have a more sharp point on them, which is what that Spitzkugel means. Pointed pellet. Made in Germany instead of the United States. 15.9. Okay, yeah, so they're heavy, all right. 15.9 again. Don't think they'll vary too much. Yeah, look pretty good, don't they? So, will these shoot any better than a homegrown American-made pellet? Have to see. Also from Handler Nademan, these are much more recent, and you can still apparently get these. The fellow who owns the 2 rifles we're testing got these recently on special order, and he was told it may be getting close to the end of these, but hopefully 20 caliber enthusiasts will not run out of pellets in the long term. Yep, definitely lighter. 11.5, 11.6. Yeah, they're marked on the package as being 11.42, so which seems very detailed and specific. So yeah, 11.5. There we go. Yep. 11.5. That assumes my scale is accurate. I haven't calibrated in a little while. Yeah, looks all good. So definitely a bit lighter, but they are a more modern style wasted Diablo pellet with a dome. Yeah, and a little bit lighter weight. And another one we can try is the JSB Exact Diablo for air guns, obviously. But they do make a 20 caliber, big tin of 500. Again, a wasted Diablo domed pellet, hollow base, of course. 13.8 grains. Okay. Yeah. $13.7. Yeah. Okay. Yep. They seem to be a nicely made pellet, and we'll see how they do as well. This is a copy of Ronald Alba's book about the Sheridan universe, Know Your Sheridan Rifles and Pistols. This is the 2nd edition, apparently, and you can get a copy of this on Amazon. This is part of their print-on-demand feature. Basically, no, they don't keep this book in stock, but if you order one, they print it out and send it to you. Pretty neat. Helps keep obscure books like this available, which is kind of cool for collectors and things like that. Anyway, yeah, it basically goes through the history of Sheridan, which some of us already kind of know a bit about, but there's a lot more interesting details and a lot more specifics on the small changes made to the gun. And but the interesting thing is that this book kind of wrapped up in 1990, and there's an addendum for 1991 here that basically explains what Benjamin, the owners of Sheridan at that time, were going to be doing to modify the guns and basically merge them with, I guess, with their 392 and 397 models. So the safety was changed, the finish was changed, the buttstock got a butt plate again, which I guess they were missing for all those years, just in terms of cost cutting. So yeah, that. But that's about it on in terms of the models that came after the Crossman Benjamin acquisition. So the models that came later than that, with the different trigger guards and things like that, it's very hard to find information on them. So this book gets part of the way there, but yeah, it's sort of interesting. The guns that we're shooting now don't really appear in this book aside from what prototypes are coming out. Okay, so here's the Sheridan Silver Streak in front of the chronograph. Hopefully we'll be able to get some decent readings off it. I'm going to start out with the official Sheridan 20 caliber pellets. That's way too many. 5 should do it. There we go. Alright, I'm going to start off with, well, 5 is even too much probably. But, well, I'm going to start off with 3 pumps. Okay. That's going to be a lot of work. It's very awkward doing this at the bench with a camera in your face. Okay, red for fire. Okay, let's see what we get. 476. Pretty good for only 3 pumps. That was a lot looser. Might have had some pressure in the gun from testing it earlier. I think you're supposed to cock it first before you pump it. Remember to do that. 408. Yeah, okay. Probably had some extra pressure in there before I started. It's yeah, definitely a lot easier to pump. .402. Well, that's pretty good. Pretty consistent at 3 pumps, so let's move up to 6 and see what we get. Don't put the pellet in yet. This is awkward. Okay. First shot at 6 pumps. 531. .536. Surprising of all of it, how loud the hammer spring is in this gun. Even if you don't pump it and you just dry fire it, it pings a lot. And you can still hear it even when the gun's going off with the muzzle blast. That and the loud pumping stroke is, yeah, I don't know. But it's supposed to be decently powerful. 496. So that dropped off a wee bit. Okay, let's try it with a different pellet, just in case. Okay, now I'm going to try it with the H&N Field Target Trophy. This is a Diablo domed pellet. And weighing 11.42 grains according to the package. I'll have to double check those when I weigh them. But yeah, we'll try 5 of them at 6 pumps. That's about all I really want to do. Don't think we'll learn much by doing different pump strokes. That's more of an accuracy test thing. Well, that's 6. I guess I should try them at 8 as well, the maximum power. Okay. .624. So they're up considerably over the cylindrical pellet. .625. Very consistent indeed. So summarizing the chronograph results, we see the H&N Field Target Trophy pellets went about 100 feet per second faster than the than the old yellow box pellets, the cylindrical pellets, because they're much lighter, of course. The Blue Streak, they performed almost exactly the same, and at 8 pumps, we're seeing the gun tops out around 674 feet per second, so not quite the 700-800 feet per second that we were led to believe these guns could do. So I took them to the range, and first thing I sighted in the Silver Streak and discovered that sights were pretty much bang on at 10 meters. Trigger pull on the guns were both really quite good, and of course there's not a lot of recoil there, so my main concern was getting a decent sight picture. I moved back to 20 yards and discovered that pellets are going all over the place, and I blamed myself for not really shooting my best at that. They were just terrible accuracy there. So I moved on to using the H&N pellets on that bottom corner there, and they did much better. I was trying harder to do my best, so I would like to use a peep sight on these guns, though. I really think that would be a benefit. On the Blue Streak, I found the sights were a bit high. I was shooting just over the top of the paper there, but I got a pretty decent group all the same. So from the second target, I moved the sights down just a wee bit and tried it again. This is with the JSB Diablo pellets, and the reason I didn't shoot any more was A, my arms are getting really tired and my video batteries are starting to go down. So what takeaways do we get from working with these two guns? Well, they're both very well made. They're nice and petite, compact in fact. Very consistent velocities, so speaks to the quality of how well they were made. Yes, better sights would definitely help. That peep sight, which was an optional thing, really should be par for the course for these guns. But it'd be nice to shoot one with that, or possibly even a scope, but I'd like the peep sight. The trigger's good. No real recoil to mess up your shooting. So yeah, what's not to like? Well, that pumping is definitely all a challenge. For plinking, I imagine you can shoot at tin cans with 3 pumps all day long. And for pest control or hunting, I suppose you'd pump the gun right on up and wait to see what happens. Target shooting, though, the kind of thing that I like to do, yeah, there's no way. It doesn't take too long before your arms are almost shaking for all the effort you have to go through. I'm sure someone will probably post in the comments that they pumped their guns up to 8 pumps and shot with them all day long. Well, yeah, I'm sure that'd be great for your upper body strength for sure. So if I thought about adding a classic pneumatic pump gun to my collection, I'm having definitely second thoughts about that. The other thing too is they're really not all that powerful. I'd expected maybe 100 feet per second more than what we were getting. A single stroke of the barrel of my Benjamin 22 will develop just as much velocity and more power, and I can fit a scope right on it without any trouble. It would have been nice if we could have compared these guns with an earlier Sheridan from, say, maybe the 1960s or 70s, and just to see how different they were, but maybe we'll come across one at some point, and that'd be fun to do. Anyway, thanks for watching. Canuck Air will return, and consider subscribing.